One. Welcome to the Utah Stories Show. Today on the program, we're talking to Eric Gardner, who is the organizer of Salt Lake City Criterium race in downtown Salt Lake City. I went and saw this thing in 2019. It's a bike race. It is super intense. It is fast. Thanks for coming on the show, Eric.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, what gave you the idea that Salt Lake City needed a race like this?
Well, so in the past, we had the Tour of Utah, and the Tour of Utah is like the Tour de France. It's multiple stages, semi-spectator friendly, usually better on TV because the racers go by once. Criterium racing, it's different. It's like NASCAR on bikes. You find a 1 mile loop and they go around it for typically 60 to 70 minutes as fast as they can. And so it's really fun to watch in person. So me and my friend, we just originally wanted to revive an old downtown crit that went around Pioneer Park, and it just went up from there to put it on a pro calendar, get the pro athletes here, and make a really fun weekend of it for the community.
Yeah, it's just really cool. I want to show a little footage right now, if we can switch to my computer view. We'll try to get that going, but I want to describe what it is. You pick out a course in downtown Salt Lake City. You got to close all those roads, and that's got to be a major hurdle to be able to do that, right?
It is. Permitting these races, permitting anything where you close down roads is hard. Marathon, Tour of Utah, Salt Lake Criterium, it's all difficult because roads are expensive. People want to use them. If there's residences or businesses that need access, you got to work through that. So finding a course with less residents, less homeowners or apartment people, like any of that helps a lot. So the first year we were at Gateway, luckily there's only residents on one side of it. So we were able to find a way for them to come in and out of their home easily or provide alternate parking.
And I think people are able to see it now. And I want to show just how hardcore this is. This is going now you're going about. You're approaching Gateway from this angle.
So you're right on the back side of the Gateway. You're heading down to, that's 100 South, and then you're going to turn right here and head towards the Sun Trap. So right now they're passing what's that club there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the Sun Trap.
Okay, now it just jumped. Yeah, so that's the Sun Trap where those police lights are. We had a police officer there protecting the corner. So now it's a left turn to head south. I think that is 600 West.
And that's probably the trickiest corner to navigate, right?
They're all pretty tricky, to be honest. That one's pretty wide, which is nice. There's a lot of roadway. And now they're going to turn on to 200 South to head back towards the south end of the Gateway Mall.
Got it. Oh, there, guy takes a spill.
Yeah.
The whole entire race went down at that point.
Yeah, and so that is part of crit racing. Like, it's fast, it's furious. Like NASCAR, there's crashes, or IndyCar, there's crashes. This is speed and intensity, and crashes almost always happen. We don't like to see them. People definitely get hurt.
Yeah.
So we don't want to see them. We do all we can to avoid it with like safety precautions. There we had to have the fencing just because we're next to the railroad tracks for safety.
Yeah, and he stayed out of the railroad tracks. He didn't get in there.
Yeah, and that crash, I think that was with 8 laps to go in the race. It changed a huge dynamic of that race because Butcher Box Cycling was part of that crash, and they had their whole team, 6 people. The whole team of 6 people was working for one person typically. And because a lot of them were involved in that crash, they weren't near the front for the last 5 to 6 laps, which are very, very important.
Wow. And so it's like the Tour de France, that one person is sort of designated to be the main guy, and the rest of the team is just creating a slipstream for him to get into. And
yep.
And how does that work? How does the one guy get to be that guy?
Well, so typically in a bike race, you're either a sprinter, you're a climber, or you're like an all-around type person or a time trialist, I guess. So typically criterium racing, the sprinters are the people who are going to make it to the end. So those 5 people work to deliver that sprinter to the finish line with 50 meters to go. So he breaks out of that slipstream with 50 meters to go, and then he finishes it off as much power as possible. But the goal is for that sprinter not to have done any or as little work as possible the last hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm watching the Tour de France right now, and you've got your sprinters who are definitely the ones they're working for. But typically with the Tour de France, the sprinter isn't the main guy. It's the mountain climbers.
It's a lot of the mountain climbers. It's a climber who can also time trial in the Tour de France, because you can lose a lot of time in a time trial. So it's who's really good at climbing and who can time trial well enough to not lose time a lot of times, or vice versa. But the sprinters, they're never going to make it over a climb very fast. They're not worried about that total time that's being tracked over the 21-day race. They're there to win stages.
Yeah. And so cycling in the United States has really evolved a lot just in the last 10 years. I noticed there's just a couple riders in the Tour de France this year. There's no longer a Tour of Utah. I'm pretty sad about that because that was an amazing race.
Yeah.
But is this the way cycling is going, competitive cycling in America right now?
I would tend to say yes. So multi-day stage races are very, very expensive. And, you got to raise all that money. It's I bet you Tour of Utah was probably a $5 million budget for that 5 to 7 day stage race. A 1 day where you just close down a few blocks in a city, it's a ton less. A ton. It's simpler. It's more spectator friendly. Tour of Utah or stage race or Tour de France, it starts in St. George and it ends in, Cedar City after going around a few mountain loops. You don't get to see them every minute. And that's criterion racing is fun because you see them go by every minute at 30 miles an hour. You got, a screen in front of you, you got your beer garden, you got your food festival, and you can just hang out and have a great afternoon. Kind of like the Capital Stage was for Tour of Utah.
Yeah, and that was the funnest one to go watch because when I went up to the Little Cottonwood Canyon stage, it's like you see the race leaders and you get 5 minutes of the glory of seeing them, and then they're gone, and then you see other guys trickle past, and
exactly,
and they're not nearly as they're not the mountain climbers, so they're really struggling.
Well, they did all the work for those guys that were at the front.
Yeah,
they worked all day probably. A lot of those people, they did all those other mountain passes to keep it controlled. So the top climber for each team would be there and reasonably fresh at the bottom of the Little Cottonwood.
So are these guys gaining some kind of celebrity status? Like, of course, everybody knows Lance Armstrong and Floyd Landis and some of these bigger names that came out of the U.S. Postal Team, but are a lot of these people coming to town now becoming bigger names in cycling?
Yes. Like Legion of Los Angeles, Justin and Corey Williams, they have a great team, and they have a brand and they have a story they're telling, kind of like Lance Armstrong did. Like the biggest thing I think in anything you do is telling your story or your narrative that you want to tell, and always be pushing that forward. And Lance did that for good or for bad. The Williams brothers are doing that. And because criterion racing isn't the biggest thing, like some of these people may end up in Europe, but our goal with Salt Lake Criterium and also the American Criterium Cup, which is the series across the country, is to make criterium racing the most desired, like U.S.-based racing available, because it's fun, it's a very American sport, like it's created here, and it's just exciting.
There's nothing like this in Europe?
No, they don't do these short laps. Like they have things they call a criterium, but it's still a road race.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, way cool. I think it's an enormous amount of work to organize something like this, and I'm so glad you did it because we need bike racing in Utah. It's like such a great place to bike race. And
just besides the bike race, like this is about community. This is about elevating Salt Lake City as a great place to be, live, ride. We have bike lanes. We've been constantly getting more bike lanes to make it more accessible. So the bike race is just a subset of a community event to get the community together and make Salt Lake City even more desirable than it already is.
Yeah. So what's the best way to get there? So it's not this coming weekend, but the weekend after on the 14th, right?
July 16th.
16th.
So Saturday the 16th, it's in the Granary District. The start finish is in front of Industry SLC. So that's 7th South, 650 South, 7th West. You can ride a bike there. The Bicycle Collective will be there doing bike valet. You can drive. There's parking. And you can, we have a beer garden. We have food trucks. We have a kids bike rodeo course.
Could you ride tracks there?
You could ride tracks there, and then you'd probably have to walk 3 blocks, I think, from what station is that? It's like Second West, I believe. There's a Second West station nearby. So yeah, you could ride tracks and ride a scooter over or bike. But with the great thing about having a bike valet is you don't have to worry about your bike getting stolen or locking it up.
And then Jordan River Trail goes right up 9th South.
Yeah, so you
And
can
then you
take
could just
9th
jet
South
over.
over to the river trail. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's
Will there be shade? It's a really hot day.
It is a hot day. There'll be a little bit of shade.
Nice.
There'll be tents there, but yeah, definitely bring a lot of water. We're gonna have water there. We're gonna have food and beer. And
But as long as there's beer, you're going to be good.
yeah. Luckily,
You don't need shade as long as you have beer.
that's right.
Cool. So, and there'll be food trucks too, and bands
There'll
playing,
be 3 food trucks. Slackwater Pizza just opened up there also.
Oh, nice.
And they have a great menu, a great beer selection. Keto's Brewing is having a beer garden also. They're on the backside of the course. And then there's tons of sponsors and expo areas. Z Nectar will be there with they have a really good refreshing beverage. It's perfect for rehydration.
Nice.
Tons. And we actually have this pro paddock parking. We're encouraging all these professional athletes to park in this one area. So, there's like a meet and greet.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing a lot to try and just make it this fun community atmosphere for people to hang out for a day.
Is it too late for people to sign up and actually try racing in it?
No, absolutely not. Typically, registration closes like a couple hours before a specific race, so people can sign up day of. You can go to bikereg.com and search Salt Lake Criterium. You can register for race. There's T-shirts for sale. we have a raffle or opportunity drawing of like 5 items that were donated by competitive cyclists that you can buy a 2,000 set of wheels, $2,000 price point wheel set, or like a component group. You can buy a raffle ticket for $5 or 5 for 20. You can do that there. VIP tickets, all that's also available day of.
Way cool. Yeah, I think my brother's done it. My brother's way into bike racing, and he's one of the sponsors, Marcosian Auto.
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
So-
I was texting with him today. I got to go by and pick up all his big banners that we're going to be hanging along the start-finish line.
Yeah, he won't jerk you around, just so you know. So,
No. That's right.
all right. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Eric.
Awesome. Thanks, Richard.
Okay, have a good one. So it is July 16th, and it's in the Granary District, and I'm going to be there. I hope you come. It's going to be great. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Cool.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad I remembered to mention him.
Yeah.
He'd be kind of pissed if he's like sponsors the magazine too.
I keep trying to get him to come to the event, but he's always out of town.
Yeah.